Well, hello and welcome back. Whether you're listening to this on Super Bowl Sunday or the days after, thank you again for joining my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Today, we're just going to do a quick recap of this weekend. There were only four, well, really three, technically three, number one performances, but I'm also going to include one that I missed from last week. But I also want to say this format will continue to be different. I'm thinking this is working for me, so I'm going to continue to maneuver in this direction. So without further ado, let's get started right away on the women's side. We'll talk about one of the two number one performances on the women's side. And right away, we'll go right to the 400. And this was at the New Mexico Collegiate Classic. Madison White of USC. It is nice to see USC back in action with their long sprinters. It's been a minute since they've had that great death from a few years ago when they were under head coach Carol Smith Gilbert, which is now that very same format is being transferred over to Georgia and working so well. But hats off to the coaching staff. Madison White looks outstanding. I get it, she's more of a 200-meter runner, but I think she probably this indoor season can take on the tough challenge of doing both. Um, to me, they don't really have another individual that can threaten on the level that she can. And as of right now, she's the first woman in the NCAA to dip under 51 seconds. Her time is 50.82. That's the time I'm going to recognize, even though it was at altitude, so it converts down to a 50.93. Either way, it's still sub 51, and she's the first one of the season. And that's always been a great sign for an NCAA champion. But this is a much more tightly contested year. There hasn't been a 400 runner that we said, oh, that's so heads and shoulders above everybody else. And even with her time, there's still a couple of athletes that are kind of close to her heels, but I think it's important for us to know of all the great 400 runners, she has perhaps the greatest uh, speed endurance of all of them. She's an outstanding 200-meter runner. So I'm curious to see what Madison will do later on in the season, but it was nice to see her get her first 400 under her belt for the year and for it to be under 51 seconds. What a great way to start the season. Moving to the women's mile, Wilma Nielsen of Oregon. And I meant to acknowledge her last week. She did run on Sunday at the um, Milrose Games. And in the midst of me trying to complete my notes for the video, I missed this as a number one performance in the mile. And so this is also a sign that things are going very, very well for the women in Oregon in this event. Hats off to Coach Shalane Flanagan. Um, Another miler. It's not just Celia Ayodis, who is the NCAA record holder. You also have Wilma Nielsen. They look like a team that could possibly go 1-2. And so this is also a reminder to many of us that BYU is not the only great distance program out west. And you have Washington, which has really kind of become the kings of middle distance. You have your Stanfords. But I think for a minute we may have forgotten the greatness that is Oregon. Specifically, when they were under Coach Robert Johnson, they had a very well rounded program, but they were especially strong in the distance. And I think they're heading back to that direction. This is a sign that, like last year, they have a potent 1-2 front in the mile. And I don't think that's going to change. Based off the recruiting, we should expect more of this from Oregon. And even more so because of the coaching has just been so strong. Now, moving over to the men's side, we'll stay with USC. We'll go to Garrett Kaloun. And it's fun mentioning him now because he was a part of my preview. I think really highly of him. He is a very versatile sprinter, very much kind of like a Madison White. He's capable of running the 1, 2, and 4, but I think it's very clear the 200 is where his bread is buttered. He is an outstanding 200-meter runner. And if you've seen the video going around social media of him running that remarkable time of 20.12 in the 200, he is now amongst the 10 fastest in NCAA history. Uh, that is insanely impressive, and I think that puts him squarely in the driver's seat. He's got a full step on the rest of the field. The closest to him runs a 20.47, and there's Wanye McCoy who runs 20.50. I do think this will be a great NCAA championships, but in this event, with a time like that now, in his progression, history along with USC's progression history, this makes me wonder if we're going to potentially see a new NCAA record in this event. The 200, which at the beginning of the year, I didn't even think was something we were going to be discussing. I thought we were going to see a great 200-meter race, but he's already in the top 10, and we got a month of the season to go. 2 more weeks before the conference championships. Well, really three. But even before then, I think there is the possibility that he may grace the 400 or the 60, but he doesn't need to run on the 200 chip conference championship because he's basically secured his spot. And not only has he secured his spot, he's secured everyone's mind that I think we're all aware of who the number one guy is. This is going so well for him. He's another proof that the transfer portal can really work for your good. Let's go to the throws now, and we'll talk about Ryan Johnson of Iowa. Been a minute since we've talked about throws outside of Tariq Robinson O'Hagan. Um, and it's nice to mention some of the other great throwers, and we're going to go to the weight throw. And to me, Ryan Johnson of Iowa is the chief reason why it's hard to give Tariq the double double just off his name. He will have to earn it, especially with Ryan Johnson throwing 82 feet, 24.99 meters. He becomes he is currently the only athlete in college right now that has thrown over 80 feet, but he's done it twice now this season. So he's already proven that he can improve upon what he's done. So we really can't put a ceiling on Ryan, and you know, the future, the world is his oyster. So we'll see what he will do later on in the season when it becomes postseason. Um, but the Big Ten is really starting to solidify the throws. It's not just Nebraska. It's not just Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan. It's Iowa. It's Minnesota. I mean, it's a bevy of really great programs, and it's only a matter of time before we start seeing more throwers at Illinois. Petros is a great field events coach, but he also knows other great coaches. Eventually, we're going to see USC get back to having those great throwers as well, the same as UCLA. And then we can't forget, again, you're in a conference that produces a ton of talent. It's Michigan State's going to start having throwers. This conference has really gotten tough and competitive when it comes to the throwing, similar to the way the sprints are within the SEC. This really is one of the areas where the Big Ten is just at its absolute toughest. And distance probably goes along with it. But an 82-foot throw in early February with his history, I think it's pretty clear that he is the new favorite and perhaps should have always been the favorite from the beginning. Now, this next section, I want to talk about some of the more impressive, noticeable performances that weren't number one. There are two on the men's side that I noticed and two on the women's side. So I just hope that we catch that and recognize that these aren't number one marks, but these are marks that I think should be acknowledged because of how great they were. So first mark is from Ajani Dwyer of Penn State. His 60-meter dash was a 6.52. 6.52. And it's surprising to me that that's not the number one time because in past years, at this point in the season, that would have been the number one time. But we have two gentlemen in the NCAA who have run sub 6.5 at Tennessee, and we haven't seen a lot from them, which I'm expecting for us to see this coming weekend. We've got a couple of really good meets this weekend, so we may see the 60 make change, but I don't think we can ignore Johnny Dwyer because he's been a great 60-meter sprinter. Things didn't, end the indoor season last year pretty well. He began it with the bang as a freshman, but he's only a sophomore. And I remember when he was a high schooler and he committed to Penn State, I was amongst many of us in this space who questioned the decision to go to Penn State. Penn State hadn't been a traditional power for men's sprints. It's, really been a great 800-meter school. And they've recently proven that. My goodness. They may qualify 4 gentlemen in the 800 alone. They might get to 5 if we don't pay attention. That's how strong Penn State is. But adding this great 60 and 200-meter sprinter makes them a viable threat on a major stage where they have the potential to bunch in points. He's young. He improves every time he steps on the track. He improves specifically when it's against, I would say, more challenging competition. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does when he goes to, let's say, a Clemson meet or an Arkansas meet, because he certainly has the speed to hang with the big guns. Another big noticeable performance on the men's side was also at the New Mexico Collegiate Classic. Samuel Ogazi of Alabama. Nice to see him back. He is a defending outdoor champion. Not a defending indoor champion, but that's okay. Outdoors, he is tough to hang with. But he began his indoor season running a time of 44.85, which converts to a 44.96. So if you're keeping track, we now have two athletes within the NCAA on the men's side running sub 45. I am really impressed with that because his track record has been pretty good. He shows up not at the beginning of the season. It seems that he is not in a rush, and I think that works very well for what goes on in Alabama. But he looks in great shape. That was a great run against a really good field, and it only bodes well. He is going to be going up against the young man, Mr. Sims, at Georgia soon. I believe they might be running in Alabama next week. If not, then we will see them at the SEC championships. Not Alabama, Arkansas, excuse me, because the Tyson Invitational is this coming weekend. And that's going to draw a lot of competition. So there may be another sub 45 runner. But his performance was especially pleasing because he hasn't really been an indoor guy. So to run time like that at this point, I do think Jonathan says may have peaked a little too early, but we'll see what happens when those two line up. Now, moving to the women, one of the more noticeable performances came in the long jump from Alyssa Jones of Stanford. Can't believe it's been it took till this week, week five. Is this week five or week six? Where we're talking about a Stanford athlete. But we can't ignore her performance. She long jumped 21 feet, 9.5 inches, 6.64 meters. And yes, I'm aware that Sofia Beckman of Illinois is still the clubhouse leader. But I don't want to ignore this woman. She's really done well as a jumper for Stanford, and they historically had some pretty good jumpers. And she's just the latest in a line of really good jumpers. And being at a school that requires academic excellence even before you arrive and while you're there, and still putting up marks like this and remaining focused, hats off to you, young lady. And especially now, we're getting closer and closer to the postseason, and that's the type of performance we want to see from our athletes to be able to challenge Sofia Beckman. That is a really fine mark, 21.5, and I think she's going to give us a 22-foot jump at some point this season. And then our last athlete that I wanted to address is a pentathlete, Sofia Ayakushina of Texas A&M. She's a name that we kind of have to get more familiar with because although she's been mentioned here on this channel, it's normally around the postseason. Didn't necessarily include her in the preview or because she wasn't a returning champion and she wasn't a newbie. She's one of those great quality athletes, but she put up a mark, 4,336 points, that made me go, wait a minute. Although this is number three, it's a lot closer to number one than what we want to pretend. She's kind of on the heels. So we need to make sure that we're focused on what's happening there at Texas A&M because Sofia Ayakushina is their latest multi-event athlete. They've had a number of multi-event athletes win the title, and she is just sort of the next star for Texas A&M. I still think Petros is one of the best. I still think it's an open field. It is really open. There is no defending champion. Jaden O'Brien has moved on to the professional race, and Jaden O'Brien is competing in the Winter Olympics. So she's not currently a multi-event athlete in the sport of track and field. She is a multi-sport athlete. But 4,336 points is a sign that I'm going to be around and I'm here to play. So more to come from her and more to come from Texas A&M. I'm going to do a rankings video this week, because I feel that now that we're in February, it's the rankings reflect more of what we've seen. Yes, I do believe that this coming weekend things are going to really shape up and shake up because there's a Tyson Invitational, there's a meeting at Clemson. There's a number of things that's going to happen this weekend to shake up the rankings. But I think right now we can discuss what we see. So look for a rankings video at some point this week. And that is our video. Really short and sweet. We did have some great performances, but hats off to many of the coaches that decided to prep their teams for this coming weekend because there's such a heavy, heavy load that some of the top athletes took a rest. And that's what we need to see more of so we're not seeing so many athletes injured. Many of the athletes that debuted this weekend at the New Mexico Collegiate Classic, they've had a smaller volume. And it actually gave me great pause because I thought, there's so much conversation around the coaches driving these athletes into the ground. I think perhaps some of their ears perked and recognized that rest is a virtue, and we need to make sure that we're resting our athletes and not burdening them with a heavy amount of events just for team titles. You can't put it all on one athlete. It's a combined effort. And I think it's hard for track and field to move away from that mentality because it's kind of always been a part of the track and field. It's the individual side creeping into the team aspect. But let the team win it, not put it all on one individual. And so, again, look for this weekend or later this week for another video focusing on the rankings. And we'll be here again next week to discuss what I think will be a fantastic weekend. So, enjoy the upcoming week. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. As you see in social media, I do engage. Thank you, as always, for your support.